Hello and welcome to Caseware Analytics AuditNet webinar event, SureFire Ways to Succeed with Data Analytics. Serving the global audit community, AuditNet is the primary online resource for auditors to share resources, tools, and experiences. AuditNet has been at the forefront of websites dedicated to promoting the use of audit technology and has now expanded its offering to include high-quality, web-based training for auditors and finance professionals. For the past 5 years, AuditNet has partnered with Caseware Analytics, the makers of IDEA, to deliver educational content on how to use data analytics to transform the audit process so it is more efficient, scalable, and provides greater audit and fraud risk coverage. With this in mind, I'm pleased to introduce our guest speaker, Lenny Block. As Associate Vice President of Internal Audit at Nasdaq, Lenny brings over 35 years of audit experience to managing all phases of internal audit, ensuring regulatory compliance, operational effectiveness, and financial reporting integrity to Nasdaq-owned entities. He also leads the Internal Audit's Data Analytics Program and donates his expertise to the Corporate Ethics Group for Foreign Corrupt Practices Compliance. Prior to Nasdaq, Lenny has worked in multiple industries including nonprofit, mortgage-backed securities, and telecommunications. Before I turn the floor over to Lenny, I'd just like to cover the housekeeping items for today. You should see a control panel on your computer. You must enable pop-ups. If you do not enable pop-ups, you may not be able to download the slides or the handouts. We are recording the webinar and everyone will receive a link to stream the recording. The link will be sent to the registered email address you used for your GoToWebinar registration. It'll be sent to you approximately 2 hours after the webinar is over. CPE will be provided to all who answer all the polling questions. We are operating under NASBA rules, so if you're joining on a tablet or mobile device, you may not be able to respond to the polling questions. You must answer all 3 polling questions in order to receive CPE. No CPE is provided for viewing the recording. The slides and the handouts are available for download and you'll find them in the control panel on your screen. You can ask questions by posting in the chat box in your control panel. I'll be moderating the questions and we'll pass them along to our presenter. I will be handling the questions when we break for the polling questions. After the webinar is over, you will receive a survey to provide feedback on your experience. We encourage you to complete the survey so that we may improve our webinars. Thank you, and let me now turn the floor over to Lenny. The floor is yours.
Okay, hope everybody can hear me. Thank you, Jim. Thank you again to AuditNet, and also thank you to Caseware Analytics for having me today to do this presentation, and thank you to all who have joined me today. So I guess good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending on where you are in the world today joining me, and I hope you find the presentation helpful. What I want to do today is basically take a different approach on one of the topics that dominates the audit profession today. And that could be the internal audit profession, the external audit profession, specialized areas, specialized folks who do auditing, such as fraud examiners, right? We've all been to conferences where data analytics is front and center. It dominates a lot of the conferences. There's always sessions on analytics. We've been to IIA conferences, IIA CBOK conferences, ACFE conferences, right? And you know data analytics sessions are front and center. We've seen them all. But what I've noticed, and I think a lot hopefully would agree, that a lot of them focus on the benefits. You know, why do we need data analytics in our organization? I think we all get that, right? So companies hear it, they get it, they go out and they buy software, they buy different packages and different tools, right? Because that's what the industry says we should be doing, right? So then the question is, they get it back into their organizations and they don't really know what to do with it. And it leads to a lot of frustrations. And so what happens is people try, they give it a shot, and then they give up. So the software goes back on the shelf until the next auditor comes along that tries to do the same thing, and usually with not as much success. So people just give up. So what I'm here today to tell you is really don't give up. I'm going to try and provide you with some surefire ways that you can reduce that frustration and really unlock these benefits that the industry is talking about. So I hope you take away some realistic and practical ways that you can take the analytics and make it successful in your organization. It's really not as hard as you think. So we'll start with the agenda of what are the topics that we're going to cover today. Going to talk a little bit about who is Nasdaq, right? Like I said, what are the barriers to the analytics, and then basically show you some techniques or ideas of how to unlock those SureFire ways and different techniques you can use to expand the use of analytics. Then I'll get into some specific applications that we've used at Nasdaq to actually demonstrate the expanded use. All right, and then I want to talk about what are some of the skills that people need or require or you can get to help you be successful with the analytics and expand the use there. Number 6 is very interesting. Of course, we all have to get our management support. We have to get funding for this, and more important, we have to convince our management team that they have to give us the time to actually go out and learn this stuff and figure out a way to use it and show them that this is really going to benefit the organization once we can get this in place. And then the last item is, how do you measure the utilization and effectiveness? I mean, you want people to use it, but unless you have some incentives and some way to measure it, you're not going to be successful. So there has to be a way to measure the effectiveness, just like we would do in any kind of audit we do. And then I'll try and summarize it all with any takeaways and really how it's going to benefit your organization. But again, the goal today is really how to break down those barriers and make more use of the tools. So talk about who is Nasdaq. Nasdaq is really more than a stock exchange, okay? And we're going to talk about that in a little bit now. We have multiple exchanges. You hear us on the news every night. The Nasdaq was up or so much, or it was down so much. I honestly don't know what it is doing today. Hopefully we see green numbers, not so many red numbers as we've seen the last day or so. And again, we have multiple exchanges. We own exchanges in New York, Philadelphia, Boston, but we're very well known overseas as well. We own many exchanges in the Nordics, Sweden, Finland, Iceland, all the Baltic countries. We've now expanded to Canada, and we own some exchanges over in Europe as well. So we are a listing venue for publicly traded companies that need to raise capital and IPOs, and that's what most people know Nasdaq from. But what people really don't know, and what's important here for analytics, is our growth areas is what's in bold. You have corporate solutions, and you have market technology. We make probably 2/3 of our revenue now outside of transaction services. We sell add-on products for our listed companies. So when you have Apple wants to announce their earnings, they hold a webinar, to announce earnings. Nasdaq's technology and software drives those shareholder meetings. All right. In addition, since we are a stock exchange, we have trading technology, and we sell that trading technology all over the world. We sell it to exchanges such as Borsa Istanbul in Turkey. We do work with the Singapore Stock Exchange. We do work with the Australian Stock Exchange. So again, we have a very diverse company now. We're more a financial technology company, as our new CEO, Adina Friedman, has pointed out. Again, we are the first stock exchange to have a woman lead our organization. Adina took over on January 1st from Bob Greifeld, and we're real proud of that. And lastly, from our team, we're really a small team. We're only 20 people worldwide. I'm talking to you today from Rockville, Maryland, which is outside of the Washington, D.C. area. But we have audit presence in New York, obviously, Philadelphia, and we have a team in Stockholm, Sweden, and Vilnius, now Lithuania. So we are diverse, and we do a lot of work by phone and talking to each other. But what's important here to take away is all these different types of businesses are great opportunities for the use of data analytics. So let's get into, again, some of the barriers on analytics. So as I said earlier, we all know that analytics is important, okay? I mean, the majority of our leaders, our C-suite executives, they all agree it's important, and we should use it. Again, they basically, our audit committee, our boards, they read the regulations, they read the papers, they watch CNN, so, they go to conferences, so they basically hear about it as well. So they come to you in audit and go, hey, Lenny, so what are we doing with data analytics in our company? I just came from this big conference, and we should be using it. Are we using it? And so we don't often have a very good answer for folks. We say, well, we're starting to use it a little bit. And we really don't like to make excuses to our top executives. So, it's not very convincing. It's not very enthusiastic. So basically what I'm hoping today is that you'll be able to pick up some ideas. So when you get that question next time from your audit committee or your board or the CEO, you'll have a much better answer, and more enthusiastic of how you're using analytics in your organization to help with risk, mitigation of risk and improving controls. So the number one thing is frustration, okay? So, and that's what the major barrier is. As I said earlier, it's the number one reaction when somebody gets some software in-house. They're not sure what to do with it. So that's a really natural thing, and you really cannot ignore it. Right? And so you have to deal with that frustration head on in your department and know it's going to be there day one. And some of the things that lead to the frustration are these type of things, right? And you'll hear this, I'm not a programmer, I don't have the technology skills, I can't put it in. I have no experience with any of this kind of stuff, right? I don't even know where to begin in my audit. How do I incorporate it in my audit, right? Where do I get the data from? And we all know that's a big barrier and challenge. Where do I get it from? And then once I get it, how do I even get it into the analytical tool? All right. So some of this should sound familiar to you in your organizations, and hopefully some of you have learned how to break down some of these barriers to use the tools more aggressively. So we don't want to ignore these. Realize they're real. Let's hit it head on and see if we can start to break down these real barriers. So how do we start to, what are some of these surefire ways to do it, all right? So what I'm saying is, let's start with things that people are familiar with, right? It's not just say, hey, this is some brand new tool, but a lot of the things in these analytical tools are familiar concepts that people are already familiar with. I'm sure everybody's used Excel. I'm sure a lot of people have used Microsoft Access. So a lot of analytical tools they incorporate the best of Excel, the best of Access, and a lot more. They're not the same, but it's a way for people to get their feet wet if they can relate to some of it to what they already know. All right? And then what you really want to do is you need to start building some small successes, right, using analytics. Start small. Think big, but start small. If you start using it for small things, then it'll build confidence, and it starts to show you and the team around you and management that this has value, and they will let you, continue to use it. One thing you must realize is it's not a magic wand, and people think, oh, we bought this tool, it's going to solve all our problems, right? I like the quote from Lewis Carroll from Alice in Wonderland. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. You really do need to know where you're going with the tool, right? You have to have a game plan in mind, and if you do, then you have a much better chance of breaking down the barriers and eliminating that frustration. So what can it do? So basically, the thing is, data analytics can help achieve audit goals, and we're going to talk about audit goals in a minute. And audit goals are really the key to a lot of this, right? So you should always think about the goals you want to achieve first, right? What are your audit objectives that you want to achieve, right? What do you want, and what questions do you want answered about your data, right? These are the type of things you can do. You can validate assumptions, whether your systems are programmed correctly. All right, but it's an investment that pays off, but it requires some perseverance, okay? It'll allow you some expanded coverage, right? It'll help you better understand the data, okay? And it will also uncover concerns in other areas, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go along. But the key to this slide, if you notice, doesn't really talk about the tool at all. And really the key is, what are your audit goals? What are your audit objectives? Most people do it backwards. They start with the tool and they don't start with the objectives. And I'm here today to tell you that you really need to start with what you want to accomplish in the audit. Okay, and again, if you start with the objectives, then you're going to be much more successful instead of focusing on the tool itself. Tools are really they're tools. They're not results. The results are what you learn from your data. Okay, the tools help you get there, and the learning from the data is really going to help you achieve your audit objectives. Okay, so the data analytics, how does it really help with those audit objectives? We talked a little bit about that earlier, and I'll just go back to that slide. These are some of the more higher level things that the audit, the tool can help you achieve audit objectives, and these are a little more specific about the audit objectives. So if you want to say, you know what, I want to look at the data accuracy of my population, all right? Or I want to just visually look at it and kind of slice and dice my data in different ways. This is a great thing that analytics helps you do. Right out of the box, you don't have to know a lot, but you can use built-in functions that many of these tools come with today, and by just pressing a couple buttons, it's going to give you your data displayed in 20 different ways. It's going to show you the maximum value of a population or a field, the minimum, the average, the standard deviations, any negative numbers, any zeros, any blanks. Just visually in 10 minutes, once you can get the data in, you've already learned so much about your data that could help you with your audit objective, and then start to point you in, where you want to, do further analysis, where you want to drill down more. Completeness gaps, validity of formulas, compliance testing. I'm going to give you a great example in a little while about compliance testing of me. But again, the whole point of these slides that I'm trying to, reiterate and concentrate on is focus on those objectives, right? Again, don't focus on the tool. Focus on the objective. The tools will have, for probably 98% of what you need, the tool will have some way to get you there to meet those objectives. So talking about that, what I'm challenging everybody today to do is to basically also think out of the box, right? You got to think out of the box in order to do some of the things I just talked about, right? We all think of analytics in a very traditional way, all right? And we think about business applications such as T&E, AR, AP, fixed assets, things like that. I'm saying today, we know analytics can do a lot of that to meet audit objectives, but to expand the use, let's think of some non-traditional ways that we can use these analytical tools to help us meet the audit objectives. So let's stop here. I think we have our first polling question. So,
and we've just launched our first polling question. In your organization, what's the biggest barrier from actively using data analytic tools? If you take a minute to respond to that, remember that you must answer all the polling questions in order to receive CPE. We'll leave this open for about a minute. I don't see any questions that have come in. Some comments, and Lenny, in terms of what you said, and one person said that's their biggest problem, getting people to actually say what they need rather than asking what it can do for them.
Good. All right.
Okay, we've got a question here too. You talk about thinking outside the box for application of the tool. Can you provide examples? And I think you mentioned that you're going to be showing that in a minute.
Yep, that's what we're going to get right after this. We're going to move into some of those. Yep.
Okay. We've got 92% that have voted. We'll leave the poll open for about another 5 seconds or so and try to get everybody else to vote. We're at 93%. We'll close the polls in 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay, closing the poll and sharing the results. And it looks like We've got a pretty even split there. The biggest barrier being lack of training, the biggest one, followed by getting source data, then mapping data analytics, and lack of technology skills. So, interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking for the specific percentages. Yeah. So, and that's good. So what was how about the source data? What was the percentage on that?
Source data was 26%, and lack of technology skills was the lowest with 18%, which
Okay.
I think that, that's probably changed because it used to be lack of technology skills was much higher than that.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to talk about that later, but technology skills, I think to be a successful auditor today, everybody needs to have some level of technology, and I think just by everybody's personal use of phones and iPads and Wi-Fi and all kinds of different technology advancements, I think by default everybody's gotten a little better with the use of technology. So that makes some sense.
Okay, let me go ahead and hide the results, and it should be back to you now so you can advance the slides.
All right, let's try. Okay.
Good.
All right, traditional business applications. As I mentioned earlier, we're hearing about, thinking outside the box. So let's move into exactly that. How do we think outside the box? So I'm gonna come up with a couple areas for everyone to think about. So not sure the backgrounds everybody on the phone on the webinar, but as I said, most of us think of traditional business applications, GL, AR, AP, T&E. But the first area of thinking outside the box is technology, right? You can use data analytics to take a look at what I'd call more technology-focused applications, log files, access reviews, alerts, right? The data for these things is out there, and I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about each of these areas. Okay, so let's look at logs, right? I mean, there are email logs out there. So if you can go get the email logs from different, from providers or your company, you can use some of the things you can do to take a look at different emails, right? You can look at you can probably see if you do some sorting to see how much personal emails going on in your company, right? You can stratify. It's a very standard function that's in most analytical tools. Stratify those emails by time, and examine any unusual activity. Do you see a lot of emails at lunchtime? Well, maybe that's a good thing versus during normal, personal emails during work hours. What goes on the weekends? What goes on holidays? I mean, there's ways to, again, thinking outside the box, knowing what you want to look at. And if you want to say, I want to see if any illegal, what people are coming in on weekends and doing, if that's an audit objective, well, here's one way to use some analytics to see what people are doing and going into those logs, right? Looking at emails and looking at common domain addresses that come in. I mean, we all know cybersecurity is probably top risk in any company today, and again, some basic analytics can be used to help combat some of that. Some other things within emails, we just talked about. You can see, look at dormant accounts, match emails with lists. Look at emails that are going outside of the company to non-employees. All right, you can calculate how long somebody's spending on email each day. So, I mean, you can go pretty detailed as much as you want, and the analytical tools will help you do that, and you don't have to be a super programmer to do it. It comes back to knowing what your audit objectives are. And these are some audit objectives, basically, and the tool, how you actually implement this. I mean, again, then that's actually probably more the easy part, getting the data, and then most tools will let you do most of these things. You may need a little technical help, but I would think out of the box that a lot of this stuff can be done with basic functions in a tool. Another thing is access rights. So again, another technology application. This is always big. Take a look at passwords. Take a look at who's logging in, when they're logging in, who has access to certain things, how long it's taken for somebody to change their password. again, analytics is a really quick and an effective way to get some data and run some diagnostics on your data, right? You don't have to go have the IT people do it. You yourself can do it. Again, you got to get the data, and that's some of the challenges we looked at earlier. But if you persevere, you'll get it, and then you'll be able to run your own analytics and to meet some of these audit objectives with access rights. System logs, again, probably every application today has some kind of log file. So with access, you could get a list of people and who access systems outside of business hours, on holidays, and when there's when they put sick leave in on their timesheets, did they actually do any work? And so again, these are just some ideas. They're in the slides that you can do to take a look at the data that come out of the log files. All right, again, just a couple more examples. If a lot of companies who do chargebacks of different things within their departments, this is another way analytics can help you do that. Again, we're in an audit function here, so we're not the business, but so you can provide a really good independent assessment of what the businesses say reporting is utilization across the companies. If you wanted to audit, the charges that departments get, now here's a great way to do it. You get the log files, you use your analytical tool, you can probably come pretty close to seeing if the charges that the business is doing is reasonable. Again, last thing is file access and management. Again, getting a file, there are actually a lot of tools on the market that do this as well. So, I mean, there are analytical tools. Without even doing your own programming, you can go out and look for tools that actually do these type of things. And then you can actually extract the results of those analytical tools and even bring it into your own analytical tool. I would think a lot of IT departments have products that do this already. It's tools like Varonis and things like that. But if you go in with the IT department and get the extracts out of Varonis, you could bring it into your own analytical tool, such as IDEA or a tool like that. And then once it's in there, then you can do your own independent analytics on the source data that a system like Varonis put out. So one analytical tool can help feed another one. So that was the first area of thinking outside the box. This one is like one near and dear to my heart because I've personally done a lot of work on this area, and that's the regulatory rulebook validation. Nasdaq is an SRO, and basically to list on an exchange or to remain listed, you must meet comprehensive standards. And the rulebook is out. Anybody can go to cchwallstreet.com, look up the Nasdaq rulebook for listings, and you'll find all our rules. What I did in audit is basically I used analytics to independently validate the algorithms that my company was using to qualify a company or have it remain listed. Now again, it's fairly complex, so it's not I can't program every rule and reprogram it, but I was able to basically get the main parts of a rule, put it into my analytical tool, get the same exact data that my company used to qualify it in their main program, run it through my set of analytics, and see if I got the same results. So if I ran it through and the company, based on all the criteria, said, man, they should never have been listed on the Nasdaq, but they were, then I would take that, I'd go back to the listings team, and we would reconcile our results, and I would get some mostly, acceptable explanations for why my algorithm didn't include this exception or that piece of the rule. Again, you can't do everything, but it's a great way to quickly do 100% sampling of all the listed companies in a given year, for example, and really see if our listings team was doing the right thing. And we did find some rule interpretation issues that I was able to highlight as a potential control issue, and as a result, the listing teams did make some changes to the rule book. So showing the value of internal audit. So this is a great thinking outside the box, using it for compliance and regulatory. The second, again, as Jim said earlier, I'm a member of the ethics committee at Nasdaq. I represent internal audit, and we did a lot of work with the Foreign Corrupt Practices, right? The Foreign Corrupt Practice Act, for people who don't know, was enacted in '77, and it's becoming more and more prevalent in the world today of corruption. Everybody can read the newspaper and see how much corruption goes on. It's really fraud. It's focused. It's analytics. They're focused fraud analytics. It's basically the bribe. You cannot bribe, government officials about anti-corruption. But how do you see if that's going on in your company? You really can't identify corruption straight up. It's just not going to say, oh, they're corrupt. But there are ways to use analytics to help you identify red flags that let you follow up on these type of things. What's really important here is the government is really scrutinizing compliance programs in this area right now. It's not okay to just show them, yeah, we have a piece of paper, we have a book, we have an ethics manual that people are, they're supposed to follow and they certify. You really have to show a much more robust, comprehensive program that you are combating anti-bribery in your company. You have good controls, you have training, and analytics is a great way to show the government, if they did come in and audit you, that we have more than just a paper program. We actually look at the data across different systems to see if we can identify any potential red flags for corruption. And why is that? It's definitely worth the investment because, this is just an example of the top 10 enforcement actions of all time. And you can see top 8, they are a lot. Look at these numbers. Siemens, 1.6 billion. So whatever you're going to spend on some analytics, it's going to be well worth your investment and time if you can stay off these lists, because you can see what the average fine could be if the government deems you do not have a good FCPA compliance program to combat anti-bribery. And analytics is just like the best investment you can make here. And we've done a really good job at Nasdaq in doing this type of thing. All right, and how we use it, as I just mentioned, what we do is we use analytics because how we do it is we use it to identify the spending trends of vendors and contractors, employees. We look at prohibited list screening. And what I mean by that is we use a product called World Check, and we have a feed from it. Basically, you put in a company, you put in a director, you put in an employee, comes back, it scans over 500 sanctions lists and see if these people or organizations are on any of these lists, and tells you, you really should not be doing business with somebody like this because they have an affiliation with a bank over in a sanctioned country that we're not allowed to do business with, right? Again, looking at the vendors, your contractors, looking at their invoices, pulling the data in, doing searches for certain keywords, looking at business reasons. Again, you can learn a lot from your data of, looking at T&E of employees, who they went out to dinner with. Again, all that data is available in your company. If you go out there and pull that data into these analytical tools, again, you got to know what you're looking for. What are your audit objectives? But if you're looking for the word entertainment and you're looking for a certain word government, that might be a great first red flag, and start to drill down and to see what those expenses were. You can use analytics for scoring of who are your highest risk vendors, employees, areas of the company. Again, today, that's a whole different kind of presentation of how to specifically do that. And, maybe in the future, I think, maybe I can do a follow-up on that. But today, but there's again, so much use of the word. You can do so much with the analytics to just do scoring of your, to come up with the highest risk vendors, and then you can go drill down into that. And again, it supplements traditional AP analytics. And that's how you have to look at this. So some other topics, other keys to success here about analytics, breaking what's good about them and why and how you can succeed. You can productionalize it. So what I just talked about with foreign corrupt practices, all these other things, once you know what your audit objectives are and you set up some scripts, in your analytical tool, you can just rerun these on a continuous basis. You can just basically just bring in a new set of data, and the analytics are in place, and off you go. And these are not difficult to set up in the tools. Again, if you want to, on a weekly basis or monthly basis or quarterly, you want to know, how many employees were working with government officials, that based on the T&E, you can set that up. Again, it's visual, right? We live in a very visual world today, and the tools let you easily interpret it, summarize it in a user-friendly way, which also is great for your senior management. As you move up the chain, they like to see data in a more concise and crisp way, and a lot of visual tools. There's a lot of new visual tools out there like Tableau and things like that, but you still need to get the data. You need to do the number crunching and do the what I call the plumbing, get the data in the right format before you can display it, and the analytical tools let you do that. And again, it's iterative. Just like our auditing, analytics is iterative. When you do it, it's amazing what you'll find is one set of results just gives you a whole nother set of questions of, oh man, I should go look at this next. And so it actually great way. It's really a kind of great audit program. Step one will tell you what to do in step two. So that's one of the also values of analytics. It's a way to help build your audit program. Takes us to the second polling question. Jim?
Okay, our second polling question, data analytic tools can be used to analyze A, log files, B, unstructured data, C, compliance with rules and regulations, or D, all of the above. And we've had a number of questions come in, Lenny, so
Okay.
Let's see if we can hit some of the highlights here. Jeremy asked, what is traditional AP analytics?
Traditional AP analytics would be looking at invoices, vendor, more like how much do we spend with a certain vendor, what the category of spend is in different areas. When we pay, it's just really more transactional AP type of vendor, just vendor spend, purchase order spend. That's how I would, categorize more traditional AP things.
Okay.
What I'm looking here is taking it to, going above and beyond those traditional AP things, drilling down to who, actually, who do we do, how much money have we spent with, say, government officials. That would be drilling down to another level below it.
Okay. All right, here's another question. Should you request data from IT or implement a process where internal audit can access data directly without notifying process owners? I have a feeling I know the answer to this question.
Yeah. Ideally, the latter, right? You always want to get the data yourself, and because obviously that's keeps more of the integrity in check. Sometime, and again, with tool-like examples, you can go out, like we use PeopleSoft. So PeopleSoft has its own querying language, so I can go out to PeopleSoft on my own and pull any financial data I want into Excel, and then I can bring it into another analytical tool like IDEA. That's what we use, IDEA. We can bring it into, then I bring it into a tool like IDEA and then basically do my analytics. Sometimes you just can't. The data is a little bit too complex in some of these more proprietary systems, so you do have to work with IT. However, you can put controls in to make sure that data is protected. So,
okay.
Ideally, yourself if you could.
Right. The questions are coming in hot and heavy now, so
we'll have
plenty to cover. We've got
okay.
94% have voted. We'll go ahead and we will close the poll
let's go
now
ahead
and share the results. And it looks like 96% said all of the above, which
that's correct.
Is
all of the above. Yeah, that's pretty obvious. Again, log files I mentioned. I didn't talk about unstructured data, but but that's another area that, you know, you could definitely do. A lot of data, and that goes back to what you just said, Jim. Sometimes the data is in these systems, and it's hard to get, you know, a file, because it's like trading data in our company is so voluminous and complex. But if I got a report that came out of the trading system, it's in PDF, I could import that PDF file into a tool. It would take a little bit of work, but these tools today do have capability to bring in, that's what I would call unstructured data, like a PDF file, and convert it to structured data. So
right, and there's a lot of unstructured data that's out there in terms of emails and social media and all those things. They can be tested, but it does present some new problems. All right.
Yeah, so somebody said to you, go ahead, and then number C is obvious. I talked a lot about that. Yep.
Okay, let me hide the results, turn it back to you. Okay, you can proceed.
Keep going, all right. All right, so a couple more areas we have to talk about. Skill sets. I mean, in order to do that, you know, what is important here? And if you notice, what I think the most important thing is the first two bullets, you know, critical thinking, knowing what you want out of, what is your audit objective here? Again, that's the critical thinking, and understanding the business. If you know the business that you're auditing, and you know what your audit objectives are, you will be successful. That's probably 80% of being successful. And then the other things in skill sets is, you know, ideally, and I mentioned this earlier, you know, you should be somewhat familiar with query tools today that are already built into ERP systems, like I just mentioned, like PeopleSoft. I mean, if you're not, then you should be working towards that as well. We want creative people. We want people who are creative. They're not afraid of the technology. They're willing to persevere. You know, that's the world we live in today. They're not afraid to try new things, and those type of things on this slide. Nobody has all of them, but if you start working on some of them, that's on your way to really expanding the use of analytics. And it's really going to help your career as an auditor. The more you know about analytics, the more valuable you will be to any organization. So I think the last topic here is, you know, support. You know, well, again, it takes time, right? You know, and you have to convince your management that this is worth not so much the money to buy the tool. That's not as expensive as you might think today. But what's more important is I need the time to figure it out. When I do my audits, I do have to put time in, you know, once I know my objectives, to figure out how to use the tool to help me achieve it. So, I mean, I would say to them, you know, today, it's just to manually search for things through data is really impossible. We have so much more complex information. You know, our systems are more complex, our businesses are more complex. So, you know, we do need automated tools. We just can't be effective auditors anymore by just pulling a sample of 25 and trying to figure it out. We really have to, you know, be a lot smarter and more creative of what we're doing. And, you know, and again, we want to be as objective and remove as bias as possible. You know, we still always will use professional judgment, but we want to base our audits on real information, and if we can pull that out with a tool, you're going to be much more objective. Again, now the last thing is, it's an important point. To me, analytics does not replace traditional auditing. It's a supplement. All right. Over time, some techniques might be able to be replaced, but overall, it's really a supplement. You're still going to have to do your other audit procedures, and so again, going back to the earlier slides, you'll get better coverage, better understanding of the data. Again, if you do a good job, eventually it could grow into a continuous monitoring or auditing program. Again, but it's a supplement to what you're doing. As I mentioned earlier, again, red flags coming from analytics help you develop your targeted scopes for the traditional audit. So if you started with this maybe up front, it's a great segue to do the traditional audit, because it's helped you pinpoint your major scope area and what the root causes you're going to be looking for during the audit. And I do want to mention this uncover concerns in other areas, because that is something that we did in that regulatory audit I mentioned earlier. I started down one path of rules, and what I found is that I said, look like a company shouldn't have been listed because they didn't meet the criteria. And somebody said, no, they did, but it looks like the data got changed after they got qualified, and that's why your numbers are, your algorithm is giving us a different result. I go, well, why was that data not locked down? And so what that showed is that showed a control problem in the database, that they should have locked down all data used to qualify a company at listings time. So what that does is, even though I started down one path, it showed a control weakness in another part of their program, and I was able to highlight that and get that fixed. Today, standards have changed. Again, analytics is really a requirement more than a recommendation. I think if you go back to the IIA standards, proficiency of technology-based audit techniques. So it's not like it's really a requirement today. When you talk to your manager, like you're going to be in, to even be compliant with IIA standards, you got to have technology-based audit. Anybody who's going to have a QAR done, a quality assurance review of their organization, the auditor when you get audited, they're going to look for stuff like this. So you're really going to have to show some proficiency, and analytics is really the best way to show it. And so I think on this slide, how do you measure, effectiveness? How do you get more people to continue to use it? Well, you almost have to say it's in our methodology. You are required to do it. Require the auditor to put it in your methodology before any fieldwork begins as one of your audit steps. And we do that in my organization, in my team. They have to show, how are you going to use analytics on this audit? I don't know. They don't know at first. So again, they got to do a little thinking, right? And it could be as simple as what I said earlier. Just get some data and profile it. Use the built-in tools and look at, how many stratify it. Just to visually take a look at what we got, and it will help point where you should be focusing on your audit. It's obviously used for sampling. You can use analytics to do a small sample and go from there. The last bullet is very interesting. As if you tie it to compensation incentives, you'd be surprised at how much more active people are going to try and use it. It doesn't have to be a big part, but why not put 5 or 10% of somebody's say bonus tied to the use and demonstration of data analytics? It's a win-win for the employee and a win for your auditor organization. So sometimes that's the best way to get people to do something is monetarily. I think so. Takes us to the last polling question, and then we'll get ready for some more questions.
Okay, which item below is not a direct benefit of using data analytic tools? A, allows for statistical sampling. B, replaces the need to do a traditional audit. C, allows one to better understand the data. Or D, provides opportunities for career growth. Well, as expected, Lenny, we have a lot of questions here.
Yeah, I could imagine.
Okay.
Good. Yeah.
If you should be able to see the questions as well. If you want to,
okay.
You can pull that that tab out and make it larger, and then you can read them. I can go through and read them, but really there's so many here.
Yeah, I'm not seeing the questions, so I'm not sure what.
All right, that's okay.
Just read them. I mean, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I'm not seeing them, so yeah.
We use analytics software in addition to Excel to assist with analytics. However, not everyone in our department is not adapting the tool. Could you please share with us your experience with getting the department to use analytic tools as part of every audit?
Okay, I think I kind of just talked a little bit about it. So basically, before an auditor starts the audit, ask them to highlight their audit objectives and whatever tool they have. Well, not even look at the tool. Like, what do they think they could use data analytics for to meet an audit objective, right? they have to know, like, what do they want to know about their data? I mean, that'd be the question. You know, what do you want to know about the data that you're auditing? And you can maybe ask that question, all right, and see what they say, right? Do they want to know the highest values, the lowest values? They want to see the integrity of the data. Is it consistent with another database? So I think you have to, you know, start with, that would be a good starting question. What do you want to know about the data that that you're auditing?
Okay.
They should know. If they don't, then you know they need to do a little more homework.
Yep. All right. Do your third-party auditors rely on, let's see, on your analytics?
Third party or the external auditors?
Mm-hmm.
No, not in my company, not in my group. No, I mean no. They we use it for our internal audits. The external audit might read our audit report, and so indirectly they're seeing the analytics we perform, but they don't ask for our actual analytics.
Okay, here's a question from Michael. Within a group, for example, finance, would you suggest a central data analytics team spread out on sub-teams, accounts payable, taxes, etc., or centralized?
Good question. I think it should be I would go with centralized, because if it's centralized, then hopefully that group has the time and resources to really delve into it. And so they'll become pretty much experts in it. Now within the central group, they might have specific areas of expertise. I think that's more efficient for getting things done than decentralizing it.
Okay, here's one on that I believe gets back to the culture of the organization. When you present exceptions found to management, do you believe that they take these audit exceptions more seriously?
Oh, absolutely. Because and I'll give you a story real quick on that. If you can present data visually, it's their data, and show them that they have misbillings, then they will definitely take it more seriously. It's like any support audit. It's very strong audit support. That we did an analysis of the database, your database, and found these inconsistencies and holes. And I'll give you tell everybody a very quick story. When I used our analytical tool for an audit of billing, I found just by sampling, found lots of misbillings. The business itself was so impressed, they went out and bought licenses for the tool themselves, so they can put devoted resources to do deep dives into the things that I just started. So I definitely think it's very strong audit evidence.
Okay, here's a question, and we're going to close the poll in just a minute or so, but we've got so many questions that have come in. Can you talk a bit more about relational database in comparison to Excel?
Excel is not a database. Okay, I mean, a relational database is a database such as Oracle, such as SQL Server. I mean, those are your main two relational databases. Excel is a worksheet. It basically doesn't have any data integrity around it, compared to a database which, you know, can handle thousands of simultaneous users, has, you know, scripting, integrity controls. That's like comparing apples to oranges. Well, you know, Excel is not a back-end database for any enterprise-wide applications. It's, like I said, it's a spreadsheet tool.
Okay, let's see. Here's one from Julian. Please explain again your example of compensation given via use of data analytics regarding sick bonuses. One obvious example is identifying duplicate accounts payable payments.
Yeah, well, so on my team, part of their bonus is tied to the data analytics. So at the end of the year, they have to present to me the audits they did and how they used analytics in those audits. The example the gentleman just referenced, yeah, that, again, what was it? It was accounts payable?
Duplicate accounts payable payments.
I mean, that's an example of how analytics can be used. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That would be an example on an AP audit, maybe, of how they used it, right? And did it result in any, you know, control issues? But again, there's so many different types of audits, and that's how you would tie it to compensation.
Okay, let me go ahead and close the poll. We've got 95% that have voted, and we'll go over the results. And then we've got a few more questions that that we can handle after you finish closing. So, okay, let's share the results. And it looks like 84% said that replacing the need to do a traditional audit is not a direct benefit of using data analytic tools.
And that's correct. It's a supplement to doing a traditional audit. It really does not replace the need to do a traditional audit. Okay. So that is the correct answer.
Good. All right, let's go ahead and hide that.
Okay.
And it's back to you, and we've still got more questions if you want to handle them.
Let's see what I have left. I think I've almost finished. I think I have one other. Let's just I can get.
You just need to show your screen.
I am showing. I haven't. Do I have control back?
Yeah, you should have control back. It's got the polling question up there.
Yeah. It's not letting me go. Let's see.
There you go. Yep.
There we go. Okay. All right. So that's our last slide, and then we'll go to more questions. All right. So again, I hope you guys picked up some things today, some takeaways. Again, you got to think outside the box, right? I talked about FCPA. I talked about rule book regulation. I talked about use of technology for analytics. You know, whatever you do, think outside your comfort zone. Make it all about the audit objectives, not about the tool, right? That's where you got to start. Forget the tool at first. Start with the audit objectives. What do I want to learn about my data? Things like that. And again, if you do that, you're going to get these benefits. It's going to expand your coverage. You're going to really understand your data, what's going on behind the scenes. That you can learn so much from the data itself, and that's where analytics is so valuable. It's a great defense with the regulators, as I said. Whoever regulates you, the government, an agency, or an industry, if you can show the regulators, we do these analytics to look at controls, it's very impressive. It's going to, you know, even if nothing's perfect, things still can go wrong, but it just will strengthen your defense. Lets people know you're watching. It's very impressive when you go, like I just mentioned, in the billing audit. When I showed the head of billing of missed billings, because I compared his product master database to his billing database and found holes using the analytical tool, he was pretty impressed. He said, oh my God, I didn't realize that. And so things like that. And it also helps with job training. If you do find areas, it helps focus your, you know, telling a business, you really need to focus on better training in these areas because of what the analytics show and the holes we see in the data. And, you know, provide some employee incentives to help them use it, you know, as we talked about with compensation. So, so Jim, I think, you know, covered it, all the points I wanted to make, and we have a couple more minutes. We'll take a couple more questions.
Fantastic. Great presentation, Lenny. Let's see some additional questions we've got here. Just to let everybody know, we had over 750 people join us today. So if we can't get to all your questions, that's the reason why. Okay, do you recommend to use companies' data warehouse for getting the data?
Oh, absolutely, because the data warehouse in a company usually has the data in some kind of format that's usable. So it's already been scrubbed and, you know, coming from other source systems. So yeah, that's a very good place to get the data from.
Okay. Which first analytics would you recommend to management if they cannot think of any area that they would like to improve? I guess how to entice their curiosity when they feel their current controls are totally sufficient to cover all risk.
That's a good. I don't know about that. I mean, that'd be a little area of those, man. As an auditor, but yeah, you know, but I mean, you know, the management has to have some concerns. You know, I'd ask them, you know, what are you concerned about? You know, that's going on in your operations. I mean, you have to know what the business is about, or give them some suggestions.
Right.
Or, you know, yeah, that's all.
Yeah, and I think, you know, what you mentioned before is, you know, try to go for some of the low-hanging fruit and maybe,
Yeah.
look at, accounts payable and travel and entertainment, and, these kinds of things are areas where, management may not be aware of how much they're spending or where the money is going, but, analytics can really provide some insight. And as you mentioned, Lenny, once management sees what the tools can do, what the data analytic tools can do, they're going to come back to internal audit and say, wow, that's a great tool. What did you use? How did you do that?
How'd you do that? Absolutely. Yeah, I'll just leave it like instead of going to them first, you go out and pull the data yourself and then show them like you don't even realize that you got this problem. So,
Yeah.
so you could do it that way too.
Okay, and a couple of people have asked which analytical tool software do you recommend to use. Obviously, Lenny is using Caseware Analytics, Caseware IDEA, and
Mm-hmm.
there are other tools out there, and you can find information on those tools, but there are Excel-based tools that you can use if you're just getting started in analytics, and then you have the more sophisticated tools like IDEA. But
Mm-hmm.
you really need to just delve into it, as Lenny mentioned before, and just get started. I think that's the most important thing. So I want to thank you, Lenny, for a great presentation today. Those of you that we couldn't get to your questions, we'll try to answer them via email. Either Lenny or myself or somebody from Caseware will take on that task. And I want to thank Caseware for for arranging this webinar for today. And Lenny, if you'd like to add any closing comments, feel free.
No, I know it's a little bit after 2. Again, thanks for having me again, Jim, and Caseware. And, again, I'll try and, get those questions. I'll do my best to answer what I can and hope to talk to everyone on a future webinar.
Great, thanks. And everybody have a great day, and let you get back to your real job. So bye, and thanks a lot. Bye-bye.